What's the status of the glass ceiling for women in business today, and does HR have a responsibility to break further ground? And is the pandemic reducing the instances of overwork in Southeast Asia? We'll answer these questions and more on this week's edition of the HR Agenda. Hello and welcome from our Chief of Staff Asia headquarters here in Singapore. I'm Paul Howell. Joining me here this week is Carmen Wee, a stalwart across Singapore's HR profession with over 25 years in business. Carmen, welcome. It's great to have you with us for today's episode.
Thank you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be here.
So there's a lot to talk about today, but let's start with you and your work. What's been high on your HR agenda these past few weeks?
Well, thank you, Paul, for inviting me to this chat. Over the last few months, as we know, the Great Resignation has definitely taken center stage, right, in all, companies, boardrooms, etc. From my perspective, been busy diving into this issue around the whys and, whether it has affected Singapore or this part of the world. From my board work, definitely, because we are sitting in a tech board in Singapore, and as you know, tech talent is in short supply in Singapore right now, and we have a very big agenda to make sure that our employees stay with us and continue to find fulfilling careers in the agency that I'm representing.
Well, this week the world is celebrating International Women's Day, so it's a good time to look at the status of women in leadership roles, particularly here in Southeast Asia. The latest data suggests women accounted for 47.7% of the global workforce in 2021, but at least globally, women held just 24% of identified senior leadership positions at that same time. Now that percentage is increasing and has been rising consistently for the past few years, but Carmen, is it enough to just be heading in the right direction? Or should the world be aiming for much faster advancement of this, admittedly just one measure of gender equality?
Well, Paul, that's a very important question, and definitely with the pandemic, we are seeing acceleration. However, the data is still mixed out there, and in fact, women have been on the short end of the stick, right, as far as the opportunities and what they've had to deal with working from home, looking after the family, trying to, juggle multiple balls and roles, as wives, as mothers, as sisters, and keeping their family safe and have a, successful career as well. So, I think, we are still far from obtaining, some data to say that, women have advanced. And certainly, from my perspective, I like to see more women, because I think over the last 3 years, we've seen women, step to the fore in national leadership, and in companies, are definitely appointing more female CEOs globally. However, we still have a lot of work to do.
There's been a lot talked about for many years about the family issues and traditional roles that have held women back from attaining higher positions more often. Has the pandemic created a shift in thinking there, with work-life balance and flexible working now having much greater importance for staff of all levels and genders?
Well, I think it depends on the company's culture, right? And I think the pandemic is a double-edged sword, if I may put it that way, because you see, the progressive companies that have actually before the pandemic already started to pay attention to the D&I, and now it's not just D&I, but it's DEIB, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and the sense of belonging. And those companies, you see, they will continue to accelerate their strategies in order to optimize and to make sure that workforce is well set up in this pandemic future. And then you see companies before the pandemic, they were sitting on the fence, and definitely, now a lot more are coming forward to say, hey, we need to have more women, we need to look after them, and how can we, develop our female talent. And there are those that continue, right, not to change their game and continue to play, right, and operate their business, same old, same old. And I would say in this part of the world, Asia, right, where we're talking about Southeast Asia, where, you have countries like Myanmar, Vietnam, Singapore, and even Thailand, where women form more than 50% of the workforce. They are still trying to readjust, right? What does this pandemic mean in terms of their career development and advancement. I would say that, we are not seeing significant shifts as far as, these Asian countries are concerned, where, the cultures tend to be a lot more, defined in terms of the roles. But with the younger generation, I would say, right, the millennials, the Gen Z, we're definitely seeing a shift because they are watching companies and how they treat women, and they would join the companies or not, depending on how the women are treated. So I think companies need to pay attention to that segment of the workforce. At the same time, think about how to support their female employees, because female employees definitely play a very, very important role in helping businesses to make money and to look after their customers. So I would say, we can't ignore the business benefits and imperatives. Now it's really not an option not to look after the female employees in terms of their career development, but I would say that it is really a business imperative.
And now that the new normal, or a new normal, is starting to take place and staff are returning to those more familiar working setups, what's your prediction for the glass ceiling over the next few years?
Well, it depends. I think if you look at it globally, right, a lot more westernized countries are looking to set quotas or to make it mandatory. In the US itself, reporting is going to be important and mandatory for, listed companies. And then I would say in the European countries, they are looking more at setting quotas. In Asia, I would say we're definitely falling behind that trend. In some boardrooms, I would say they have not even discussed this issue, right? Because anything that's not championed by the board or at the highest level, that there will not be any traction. So hopefully, with companies looking to capture the growth that comes with, perhaps borders opening up, and countries realigning their supply chain operations and looking at new markets and operations, they should, definitely look at this area around how they can accelerate this trend. I would say that, the glass ceiling, you find that, in Singapore, we're leading the way in terms of having more female CEOs. And I do, see and hear a lot more businesses being set up by a lot of women. And you can be very, very sure that when the women sets up the company or they are CEOs of companies, that will have a trickle-down effect on appointing more female leaders, to the executive leadership. And hopefully, we're beginning to see that shift. But I think it will still take a while, as far as even family-owned businesses are concerned, or even, I would say, the more traditional industrial companies that have traditionally relied on a very homogeneous, workforce, I would say usually male-dominated, right? And even in the tech space, it has become very male-dominated, but that is changing because a lot more, millennials and Gen Zs are coming out to set up their startups and all that. So hopefully, I think, it will accelerate the trend, but it will take, we'll have to watch and see, and in the next few months and years, how, we can gather the data and analyze from there.
And Carmen, what is the role of HR in advancing more non-male candidates for leadership positions more often? Is there more to do at the policy side for large employers today?
Well, definitely. And I think, as we know, we always use the word enabler. But I think with the pandemic, hopefully we're having more courageous HR leadership, stepping forward, putting together, a business case to help their leadership understand that this is really a business imperative, both not just for their workforce, but also for their customers. And there are real tangible benefits, for organizational agility and resiliency when, there's a more diverse workforce. So I think, HR plays a very, very important role in that. And where, they run up into challenges, right, with leadership that perhaps don't quite appreciate, this topic as much as they should, then I would say, just keep on pushing, keep on championing the cause. And, one day you might just, see a breakthrough. If you are out there, I would say align yourself with networks, women groups, and even business groups that believe in that, because I believe that, it is changing. And with the pandemic where, every company is looking to optimize the talent, HR plays a very critical role. And now is the moment for HR to really step up, right, to the plate. And this is a very evident area where you can really contribute as far as the business is concerned.
Next up, we have another interesting topic, which shows some staggering numbers. It's the culture of overworking. Now, overworking is perceived to be linked to higher rates of productivity and results, But the latest studies show that it doesn't necessarily result in more work being produced. In fact, it can prove to be a health risk that reduces long-term productivity over time. A study by the World Health Organization shows that people working 55 or more hours each week, so we're talking almost 10-hour days, 6 days a week, face an estimated 35% higher risk of stroke. This culture of overwork is common in a lot of North Asian economies, Korea, Japan and China, and it's also common in some specific industries in Europe and the US. Carmen, do you see it also happening as much here in Southeast Asia?
Well, definitely. I mean, Singapore is the most fatigued, workforce in the world, right? And in more traditional countries like Indonesia or Thailand, where you want to be seen, right, and not so much for your productivity, but you want to be seen to be working hard. I understand. I mean, the motivations for that. However, I think you and I know that it's really not sustainable. And I think, in Asia, where we place a lot more emphasis, right, on the family and having, that collective responsibility, hopefully, we're seeing more HR leaders putting in place, right, practices and policies that would be a lot more family friendly and, more flexible in terms of options. And definitely, there's a lot of work to do, in that regard, right? Because I think, given the fact that we are not clear when the pandemic would end, and this would really be a bumpy ride over the next few years, it is imperative that we start the work now to think about, where are the areas, where are the policies, where are the practices where we can flex as much as we can to strike that balance, right, to building a very agile and productive workforce. Otherwise, with the great resignation that's spreading across the globe, you will find that the downside of replacing the workforce that leaves you is in fact more expensive, right, than helping to retain them. So I think I think all the data is out there that retaining sometimes takes as much hard work as replacing, but I think there's really a lot to do there.
We know now about the impact on individuals and the risks to both their physical and mental health, but what's the impact on companies of this sort of culture? And is that enough impetus to force a change from what can be some very long-standing traditions?
I think, we know that when the top talent leaves, because they've been poached by the competition, then, it loses that edge, right? Whether it be in sales capability or even in innovation capability. And I think, given everything that's happening right now, we know that comparative advantage is really in your talent. Machines can only take you this far, and, it takes the human being, right, to dream up new technology and machines and to write those codes and algorithms to help the companies to compete in the next, space that they're trying to capture. And so, it's not just replacement costs, but really the innovation edge, the ability to, I would say, bring products and services to the market that really create a new space or be a game changer. And I think, which company is not going through some form of transformation, right, in order to achieve those objectives. And I think that, it is really, the hard work really is building and retaining and continuing to protect that culture of innovation in the company. And it takes with how you treat your workforce and take care of them. I think, we cannot overemphasize the importance of leadership culture. And so, if we continue to build a leadership culture that's very open, human and authentic and transparent, then I think companies will go a long way in ensuring, right? Great companies are not built overnight, but there are certainly, consistent trends and threads as to why those companies are strong and successful.
And how do you think HR leaders and teams can improve the situation, or at least keep pushing their companies in the right direction?
Well, assuming that, you have a leadership that wants to, open to listening, right? I think at every level of the HR team and leadership, you should be discussing, right, what we can do better, what, we can really be thinking about to look after our people better, right? And the investments that need to go into having better practices, whether it be family policies or technologies to help, to relook at, how work is done. Because a lot of the stress, right, Paul, is really in around how work is done, right? And the leadership support or not, right? for flexibility. And so, building a culture is not overnight, but certainly there are steps that companies can take to initiate that conversation. And, hopefully we're having more courageous HR teams and leadership to have those conversations in a very open and authentic, transparent way with their companies.
Up next, we're talking HR Tech with Chief of Staff Asia's Technology Editor, Vandana Nanwani. Hi Vandana, it's great to have you back. What will you be sharing about in today's HR Tech Update?
Hi Paul, in today's episode I will be discussing Facebook or Meta versus Horizon Workroom that are designed to help revolutionize office work. Now this has been making headlines globally over the first part of this year and has even been termed as the future of workforce.
Well, that's interesting, Vandana, but what makes it different from other video communication platforms such as Zoom or Skype?
Well, Horizon Workrooms are claiming to offer more than just a flat screen for employees to communicate with one another. So imagine being in an office setup but without the commute, but still have that sense of presence and shared physical space with your colleagues. So we can still get that small talk and interactions like we do in a real office. And all this can be done from the comforts of the employee's own home or preferred workspace. Now, it also aims to provide workplace flexibility, but also make the process of business communication smoother. So things like getting together to brainstorm, working on a document simultaneously, or hearing updates from a specialist team are all possible and all enhanced from the typical Zoom experience that most of us now understand. Now, all the two-dimensional ways of video and high-quality audio are able to get the job done. Facebook, or Meta as it is known now, says these don't match inherent human need for interactivity that we all have. So we are all used to gazing at people when they speak and reacting with different gestures and expressions. So Meta versus Horizon Workrooms aims to bridge this gap to make remote communication that much closer to in-person communication.
And what is the technology involved with these Horizon Workrooms?
Now, virtual reality is obviously a big part of it, as well as artificial intelligence. Now, VR is not a new technology, but it hasn't really been used in this manner previously. So Horizon Workrooms work as stimulators, but also enable interactions in human form. Now, what's even more interesting here is that the workrooms are also accessible from anywhere, really. So you don't need a special machine or high-tech hardware. The software is all cloud-based and can be run from a laptop, desktop, a phone, or even a tablet.
Thanks, Vandana. We'll see you on the next episode with more HR technology updates.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, that's just about all we have time for on the HR agenda today. Thanks very much to you, Carmen, for being a part of this episode.
Thanks, Paul, for the chat. Wish you all the best.
And thanks to all the HR professionals out there watching us this week across Southeast Asia. Do check out chiefofstaff.asia for all the latest news, views and insights on the regional HR profession. All the links and details from everything we've shared today will be in the article or the description box of this video. I'm Paul Howell and thanks again for watching the HR Agenda.